so that during the break you can improve the standard of what's being manifest in your workbook. As we've said, the workbook is not a place to say, I like this. Because it's in the workbook, we're probably able to figure that out ourselves. Although if you just had a workbook of everything you hated, that would probably be a nice, charming surprise for us during market.
We'd love that.
Yeah, hate book.
My hate book.
My hate book.
And we decided not to call it the workbook.
No, that's right, the visual diary.
That's right.
Yes. The reason why I steer away from the word visual diary is that I often spell it visual dairy, and I look stupid in front of the students. So I just have to get past my own little ego, and the visual diary does work better as a phrase because it is about you and your visual world. So the visual diary, the recording of one's thoughts, comes from the period of thinking onward called the Renaissance. So this is Leonardo da Vinci's, and he's scribbling away thoughts to himself. This has, of course, had great weight in posterity. Future scholars have looked at it and wondered at the genius of his mind. But these are thoughts on the fly that he has scribbled down and he goes back to revisit. And that's exactly what Sue said to you earlier in the year, in that the visual diary, ultimately, once you've finished this year, is something that you can keep referring back to, because it should be totally filled and flush with ideas. It doesn't mean just writing about the current project. It should be all the thoughts and the thinking and the research and the other ephemeral things that you've found out. Ephemeral means short-lived. Thoughts and realizations that you could come back to and dip into once you've graduated or next year.
And you've got less time to think, but you've still got to come up with ideas.
Yes, exactly. Charles Darwin, who had some thoughts about things and the way that the world has been created in more than 6,500 years. But the most important thing I think of this image is this. I think, and again, it's a record of thinking. I've been having these thoughts recently, so he scribbles them down, and again, this could be something that happened in a walk around the ship, or on a Sunday afternoon, or just waking from a dream. So it's recording the precious fleeting moments and what happens from there.
But we decided that they could replace I like, I think.
Yes. I think this looks like the guts of a rabbit spread over a plate. And that makes me feel this.
Hungry.
I had carrots for breakfast, actually. Albert Einstein's workbook. So obviously they can take different forms. It's not just within our practice. So this is some strange physics thinking, probably once again him stealing his wife's idea. If you did not know, E equals MC squared is more of the thinking of his wife than him, but we can leave that.
Who cares about her?
I do. Johnny Hardstuff. He has quite a very nice website worth checking out, but he's predominantly a motion picture, moving image maker. But again, he gets to his realizations for his filmic work through sketching and drawing and collecting. And this is a shot from...
That's the old space. That's the old...
Oh, it is?
Space, so, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, when they were down into...
Oh, okay. All right. But anyway, this is a student setup, and although the walls are kind of sloppily constructed, there is a good selection of work. But as we can see, here is, well, if we look around here, here is a student submission. But there is the student's workbook, and we can see that there is quite a lot of what's going on there. So if we compare that to here, we can see that this is a selected process. It's not that they're just throwing up everything they have, it's that they're selecting only a few examples of what's been going on here. So again, as the visual diary is 60% of your grade, it also should have a greater amount of work attached to it. Now, it isn't going to be final outputs like A0 posters because they're very difficult to fold up and place on a page, but it should contain the thinking and layout sketches and thumbnails of ideas that are being developed. Yeah?
Yeah, but not the cushion.
But not the cushion. That's us trying to be bribed off with soft furnishings, teapots and doilies. Doesn't work. Yeah, okay, well, we've got some nice stuff at the house, but yeah.
If we can lie down to read the workbook, that's much better.
Well, it's better than lying on the floor and crying. Workbooks visual diaries can take different forms. Here is a student who supplied a supplementary thought book on how he deals with things technically. So he spread his presentation of his thinking across several publications. This is one of those expensive, what are they called?
Moleskin.
Thank you, moleskin books. So this is A5 or A6 in size. So here's how he worked the technical working of his web practice. His visual diary had his sketches, his layouts, and people that he was looking at. So if we think about our marking criteria, which is of course the poster just over there on that wall by the fire alarm door, this half here, well, it's more than half, it's 2/3? 3/5. 3/5. Analysis, exploration, and research. And we're thinking that we might redesign that poster so we can work our color coding of that poster to what's happening with this presentation right now. So you can see a direct relationship. We're going to put this PDF up online, and of course, since we're making a video, there'll be that available on YouTube as well. So we can see that within analysis, in terms of our workbook practice, evaluating the brief, so what's being asked from you on a daily or a weekly basis, is establishing how you're going to operate within that, but coming here to this section, concepts developed, design processes productively shaped and appropriately focused through ongoing evaluation. So that means you are reflecting upon what you are doing as much as you are reflecting upon what you are looking at. So analysis happens in 2 places, in fact even 3 places, and that there is the analysis of what your tests and explorations are. There are analyses of what your research, what you're bringing into your book. And then the third one is kind of post-event analysis. You've actually made and finished something. What have you learned from that? What would you do if you had the chance to redo it? Because I'm sure that all of you have had the opportunity to write an essay in your academic career so far. So if you're thinking about high school, and if you've ever got to that moment of when you finish the last paragraph and then you think, now I have it, I wish I could rewrite the whole thing, but it's now 8:30 in the morning and I've got to hand it in at 9 o'clock, so I better get to school. That's a post-event analysis. So even if you totally feel like you've scorched and burnt something, especially in reflection of our critiques that happened on Monday, you should be writing up an analysis of that presentation or that critique that you received, and including a couple of screen grabs.
Can I just say something?
Go on.
The words querying, critiquing and strategizing, I think, could be replaced here to make it easier for you to understand. And I would replace querying with asking questions. And for those of you who had tutorials with me, that was very much what I was asking you to do. And if I gave you written feedback, I was telling you to ask questions. Ask yourself questions. And then the critiquing is the thinking. So I'm asking a question, I'm trying to think about the answer. And to think about the answer, I'm drawing on my research and I'm drawing on my exploration. And then the last one, strategizing, I'm planning how to move forward from here. So I'm asking questions, I'm trying to find answers to those questions by analysing the exploration and the research that I'm doing, and then I'm planning where to move to next. It's a simple way of thinking about analysis.
You want to start on that one?
Well, the exploration, it's testing and
Yeah.
playing with ideas.
Yes.
So instead of maybe inventing and practicing, yes, I'm being inventive. So I'm putting things into practice.
Practicing.
I'm trying things out.
I think
I'm playing with ideas.
That says intentions.
Yeah.
I'm
Inventing, it says.
It's in practicing intentions concepts. Where does it say inventing?
Inventing.
Oh, there, right. I was looking at practicing.
Yeah, so
And
practicing,
that's the
playing
most
with an idea. Yeah.
And even there's practicing what you've found through research as well. Finding someone's work in IDN magazine, or a way of thinking through reading I magazine. Research. There's always this problem in first year, and that students collect a whole bunch of things printed off the web, and they call that research. It's not quite. Research is findings that are acted upon, or findings that create new directions in thinking or new realizations. If you're just cutting things out or printing things out and putting them in your workbook, that's resourcing. These are resources that have not been acted upon. So if you have something, there needs to be a certain level of notation or experimentation from it.
There has to be engagement. So I tend not to agree with Al's word listening there, though I think he's put listening there in terms of critique and listening to other people. I would put the word action under research, because I think research has to be active engagement. Otherwise, as Will says, that's just resourcing. Going to a magazine or a website, cutting something out, shoving it in your book, not notating it, not giving us, so not telling us who the person is, where the website is, or the magazine you got it from. Those are basic courtesies of copyright that you have to deal with throughout your entire degree. But making annotations is something you are going to be asked to do
Next year.
and over again. And an annotation is to give us some background to the imagery, who the person was, what they were trying to achieve by this work, and then some kind of opinion of yours on that work or the processes that that person employed. Okay, so it's active engagement with ideas. Research is not passive. And research is fun and exciting, and it's how you push your ideas forward. So without it, you cannot be successful.
Synthesis, building up of separate elements into a connected whole. So synthesis cannot happen without these three things. An overall holistic entity brought together through the interactions of practice, research, and critique.
And I think the word there that's key for you to understand is it's holistic. Okay, it's the whole of your practice pulled together. And we tell you quite clearly what we expect, and then you attempt to pull those project elements together into one whole. And included in that expectation is your workbook or your visual diary. And they're the easiest marks to get, but they seem to be the hardest marks for you to get at the same time. You know? You have to put everything into your visual diary.
Synthesis is the result of good exploration. And we see here the whole work constitutes an enrichment of concept, context, and process. So the word here of key is enrichment, that you've put splatters and shadows together, but when it is viewed by either yourself or those around you, they see more than splatters and shadows. They pick up a feeling, a space, a narrative that is based upon this thing called the semiotic relationship. There is a denotative value to what the combination of elements is. And that, of course, should lead to good communication.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, as I've said before, you can communicate without having good synthesis, but the value of the communication is usually quite low. So your communication mark might be higher than your synthesis grade, because you can often communicate an idea without pulling all the parts together. You can still communicate an idea. Otherwise, I mean, let's face it, if you're not communicating anything, then you're a clear fail. So you can get a grade here because that's reasonable if you've got an idea that's been reworked a few times, because it's got to have a visual output. If you're not meeting our requirements, so if there's no storyboard, we can't track an idea at all, there's no motion tests, there's no production drawings, of course you're not communicating anything. But at this point in time, there's nobody who's not participating that's not communicating something. That's just the value of what you're communicating. Right? So we want you to communicate in a more clear and concise and considered way.
And the easiest way for you guys to get there is by the simplification of what your current projects are. Visually, there is still too much going on. So graphic design theory books will talk about similar processes, and they'll describe it in this very clean and simplistic way that one thing leads on to another. And we see that we have a reflection here of what I was saying before, of the post-event analysis. What have I learned from this? What would I change if I could? But realistically, it's actually a lot more like that. There is no direct, okay, I've done some analysis, now I'll do some research. I've done my research, now I'll do some exploration. There is this approach to our practice which is a lot like shopping at the supermarket. You've finally got to the soap section and you realise, oh, I needed to get some cauliflower. So you have to go back through all the aisles and pick up that thing. And this is a more ambient, a more honest way to practice. We drift from one thing to another. And this is really a good explanation of how we are a career and not a job option, and that this level of thinking and practice should permeate most of our lives. looking at television, looking at magazines. What's going on here? What's happening with this typography? Why are they trying to fit so much onto a page? Why have they used that texture? Ah, it communicates this. And again, the workbook should be at hand to notate these quick thoughts and realizations.
I think that this way of thinking about it precludes the night before sticking. And if you look at this diagram, this is why it's so clear to us when you just stuck stuff in the night before, because this way of working is very ambient, it is ongoing, and it's reflective, and you can move backwards and forwards, and we can see a progression of ideas, even though it's not necessarily wonderfully linear and circular. But we look through the whole of your diaries, and
we read them.
We can see when it's very clear to it just stands out like this big red arrow that says stuck in the night before. You know, it's really obvious. So this has to become part of your practice. It's something that you do all the time because you want to do it, because you know it's going to make you a better designer. Okay. I think we've lost a momentum here.
Okay. So this lovely pile of thinking is generally what an A level of performance looks like after 1 year's study. A huge, big mountain of thoughts and realizations and experiments and research. Who here has nearly got through their first workbook? Couple of folk.
There were a couple of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good sign of practice. So what happens in the visual diary is these things here on the list. Now, didn't you think there were a couple more?
We did. We agreed there were more.
There were more. Do you remember what we were saying? Drawing, pasting, writing. I don't see painting. Anyway, I don't see cutting. But those are all drawing practices.
Yeah, I suppose so. I see notating, but I don't see writing. Oh yeah, writing's
Apart
at
from
the
there,
top. Yeah,
there,
I
that
just see
second one.
writing, right,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So what we're going
I
to...
don't see sellotape.
You don't see... I don't see... Yes, I don't see $10 notes. Yes, at the bottom should be bribing. Bribes are accepted by the lecturers. They don't do anything for your grades, but we will accept them. Humour.
Oh no, I don't know about that. Those biscuits worked really well last year.
Well, they stopped us from being so angry.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we're seeing here is a survey of one student's workbooks. She did excessively well, and we can see through the following pages how these marking criterias can be manifest. So she she came to us as an adult learner, had already a career in a few other industries, and had this interest within fashion. And although these are not her photographs, she has decided to section them and cut them up as a way of just playing with the image, which has then become a exploration of how wholes and divisions have worked, which have become this graphic sketch here, which has led on to this form of graphic reduction and watercolor exploration with these images that are related. So we can see that there is a flow around the pages from a resource which through this execution has truly become a means of research. There was a brief set that was dealing with the one word called manifesto, and she has looked at the this image here and taken a colour sample to work on the idea of a stencil, which is reflective of the type of environment where we would expect to see stencils. We have something that looks like barbed wire fence in the background. And then she's moved on to this kind of handwriting, but we also see below that lists. Was lists one of the word lists was one of the things missing?
Yeah, but we covered that anyway.
So she's signified to us which website she's looked at. She's been thinking about some films. I don't know why there's Quark Express there, but again, she's finding people that have been practicing with this kind of visual economy. And again, survey ideas. So she's actually manifesting down how she's going to find out more information. Just simple notes. You notice that they're not great big essays. We don't need paragraphs. We just need simple bullet points. Anything you wish to say? No? Okay. As part of her practice, she...
She's a different person, doesn't it?
Are you sure? I thought we got to the point this was...
We've actually looked at two different
We were, yeah. Well, we see within this workbook that there's been the inclusion of tracing paper as a way to fit in extra notes. Some of you have been putting great big spaces in your workbooks because you know there's some other kind of thinking that might take place, or you've been putting one particular part of your practice at the back, which is not a good practice. It disconnects the whole flow of this thing. If you just put your research at the back, it means that we are losing the thread of your thinking because we have to constantly feed back to it, flip back to it. So using tracing paper as a way to put in a new level of realization, or as a way to sketch from other images, or as a surface for making paint explorations of just selecting particular parts of an image. It's almost like a manual version of Photoshop. Is where, yes, a doodle.
That's not on the list. Doodling.
Doodling isn't on the list, no, and that's a good thing. There is every year in Auckland a graphic design conference. This student in particular went and this is Kate Moros, is that it? There's an image of her, and while Kate was talking, she was making notes of this woman's practice, and again, she's bringing to her visual diary the learning that's happening to her around her world. It isn't just a place for writing notes within your workbook, and I guess that's the difference. A workbook is a thing full of notes. A visual diary is a thing full of potential graphic design, and that's what we really saw at formative assessment. There is a lot of note-taking going on, and that in itself isn't a bad thing, but we expect to see more graphic design research. And the best place to start for that, believe it or not, and most of you don't, is the library. Is Liz here?
Yeah.
How many books did I show you last week?
I don't know, 100.
100? And have you gone back and had a look at them?
Just answer yes.
Yes. Okay. You've now inspired everybody. Your turn.
You just wanted me to talk about this because we had this big discussion about this. But anyway, this is a nice example of two different pages from a workbook. They don't sit side by side like this, but it's an example of how the visual research that this person has carried out into, what was the artist's name? Graham
Something Thwaite.
Drawing practice, and then has taken photographs using the same lighting and facial expressions and body movements. So they've analysed, nice notation here on the side. They've annotated this work well, but they've also analysed things going on in these drawings. They need that information to translate that information across to their own work. So they've gone out and they set up these shoots with people they know. Okay? And they've made them stand in particular ways and have certain looks on their faces, and they've used lighting in exactly the same way that operates in the drawings. So a lot of highlight, very strong shadows. And then they've looked at a different artist, Generation Next there, who has used this sort of high contrast black and white drawing style. So the idea was not to end up with photographs that looked like the drawing styles that they had been referring to, but also to end up with drawings, but end up with drawings that came from their photographs of people that related to their work, that were in situations that related to the ideas they were working with. So they could have hypothetically drawn ideas from these other two artists, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted to go through that process of actually referring to the photographer. Because what it gives them is those people in an urban Auckland context, not nowhere land or New York, but within an urban context that actually related to, I think this brief is quite possibly, might be the Dominion Road brief, might come from the Dominion Road brief. But anyway, so it's set within a particular site. So they've wanted to explore that site photographically, and they wanted to have characters in that site, so they've gone to the effort of taking the photographs. The photographs were not the final thing. Here you see the photographs as what? What are the photographs operating with in this context? What's the word we'd use to describe these photographs? Eh? It is research, it's visual research, but it's more than that. It's exploration. What kind of exploration is it? Yeah, it's drawing, okay? It's not done with a pencil, it's done with a camera. But why is that not drawing? This is not a finished work. This is an idea explored through a camera. So it's the same as picking up a pencil. For those of you who are no good at picking up pencils, please find other ways of drawing. Because when we're looking at your drawings done with pencil, a lot of the time we can't understand what it is you're trying to communicate. Because you aren't very good at drawing with a pencil. If you are asked to come up with a series of drawings, and it's quite likely that when you go out and get a job that you will be asked to come up with a series of drawings, and you can't draw well the ideas that you have in your head without spending days neatly drawing things, then Learn to use a camera. Okay? Explore with a camera. Draw with a camera. Then take it into Photoshop and push it out as a drawing so that you can communicate very quickly and effectively. Okay? And then you can go on to, and do all your post-production stuff and take it into Illustrator and all this different sorts of things that you might do later on. But to come up with a spread of ideas very quickly, a pencil or a camera, they're both tools. Okay?
And a knife.
And a knife.
What'd you say?
Nothing, I didn't say that.
Here we see a setup or a piece of research, a spread of research being used for development of an animation. So we see that there are some...
Images from Carnival.
Thank you. I was stuck on the word images. From the title sequence. Yeah, she's created her own analysis. Synopsis, there we go, of the intro sequence to the Carnival. And then she has started collecting resources for what's going to go into her animation. So she's just cut out a bunch of things, and we assume that there is some kind of domestic space to be constructed. So therefore, when we look at her final animation, we see that it is set within a domestic space. We can start to giving her synthesis and exploration marks. If it was set on a battlefield, we would be, again, bewildered.
Exploration of mark making.
And layout.
And typography.
Simple as.
Yeah. Nice little comments there also on the way that she's made the splatters.
Or red dye for strawberry stains. Yes, and we probably instantly read it as blood. We see how a idea is being explored through 4 iterations till we get to this last option here, and we see again there's butter paper being brought on, another tracing and thinking. They might not be directly related in terms of themes, but we see that there is a visual relationship. So again, the whole idea of doodling and sketching being fitted in. So we can see this is an example of her whole thinking at that moment.
I think, the use of the transparent paper is really smart, because what it allows her to do is to take some imagery that's photocopied and some imagery that she's taken out of the computer, that she's created in the computer. And instead of working directly over that, she can create layers. So she's not destroying stuff, she's giving you layers of interpretation. You can move through those pages and actually see how she's thinking. So it's quite, it's a very effective idea. She used it a lot. This is fantastic. Who do you reckon did this?
You did.
And you did it.
No, I didn't. So another thing that could be used in your visual diary is, of course, in combination with word lists, the idea of small brainstorms or mind maps or visual maps, or the phrase that you know them as. So we have this, you have the central idea, and then all the thoughts that come out from that, which is a way to signify your further research directions. So we've started with gun, but suddenly we've got to the idea of pride, or perhaps purses, or the idea of the precious within deadly objects.
And all of those words then can lead us out to visual exploration and visual and written research. So breaking an image down into words is a very good tool when you're trying to find meaning within an image. Replace the images that you can see with words.
And so this here occupies as exploration and as analysis.
Yeah. If you did that, you'd get a really high grade.
You probably would. If you just bribed us with that handgun, because it's really cool.
If you pointed that handgun at us.
No. No. You haven't been shot at yet, have you?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah.
Ah.
I've been held at gunpoint 3 times.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So
That was it. Was that in MIP?
yeah, but it was the second semester. So if we look at just the colour codings of the marking criteria, we can start to then go through the same images and see how those marking criterias can be found, or how us lecturers see the marking criteria in the workbook. So there is research which is being explored and being tied together. We see some writing on what has been found and made. We see some further exploration, and this as the final object relates to communication. Not difficult. You may be thinking to yourselves, but hang on, we're doing something that moves through time. If you think about your key moments and how you are building up your production drawings, which should be driven from your storyboard, it still can take this single image or page spread approach. Again, research. The idea of the colour and the environment is being explored and explored. There is analysis of people who work in the same area, and then there's research of websites that have been visited. And again, so this is the first one we discussed, so exploration with things with holes and with sticking or weird shapes coming in, explorations of drawing, and communications of the final product. So the space between this image and these drawings, there we see a synthesis happening. And again.
And again. Oh!
And now moving beyond the practice of students, these are the workbooks that have been taken from the profession. So Elwood Smith, Kate Moross, Michael Beirut. If you don't know these names and you want to find out more about the practice of graphic design, these are some of the people to be looking at, and they all operate within the same production, thinking, realization, critique means.
Can I just make a comment here?
Can I say one first?
Oh, gee, you always
All
try
right,
to
go on,
overspeak
go
me.
on, go on.
All the time, it's raised, boys aren't any good at visual diaries. Boys can't keep visual diaries. Boys aren't that organised. Boys need mothers to do these sorts of things for them.
That's sexist claptrap.
And yet, there are books in the library and there are websites where there are endless examples of male designers who keep beautiful visual records and drawing books and visual diaries.
Like that one,
So
for
we
example.
don't buy that excuse, okay? Paying your girlfriend to make your visual diary won't wash.
Oh no, someone's done that.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh damn. There is a book that has just come out which is about the world's leading graphic designers' workbooks, and it's called Graphic, I do believe.
It's got a tricky title.
It is. It's a very tricky title, but I also made a posting about it on our WordPress site about 5 or 6 postings ago, and it links through to a website that gives an interview, and you'll get to see some other pictures of practitioners. Next. So again, the practices of those 2 people. Sometimes the work in itself only exists within a workbook.
Yeah.
The workbook itself is seen as a practice, not as it is an end result, not necessarily a thing towards something else. For your guys' case, though, it is definitely the second thing and not an end result. The exploration of materials. So the idea of stitching and exploring wet media and cutting and looking just at colours and textures. So when we talk about texture, you have been applying it towards a certain image or a certain still within your title sequence. You could just be sampling them as textures themselves. These things have been interesting, have taken my interest. I was looking at someone's work on Monday, and I think it was yours, Chris, where it suddenly in the third image there was this black screwed up paper texture. So that itself could be printed out, or screwing up paper and looking at its texture and its the way that the shades of grey change throughout it.
Taking photographs.
Taking photographs, absolutely.
There's a few of you that are actually hand making, but a lot more of you could solve your problems by making things by hand and then photographing them and then cutting them out. And Jeff, I'm thinking that might be an option for you. Is that, when you were making things, textures and that, they were very luscious. When you try to make them in the computer, they lose that quality. Let's do a lot more making, then we can photograph it and we can scan it. If you can't make those fish in the computer, make them by hand. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? In fact, we love people that make things and then use what they've made and scan it and put it in, because it has their certain qualities to it that you cannot get by producing things inside a computer.
Be fluid. Again, exploration of practices.
Lots of photographs. This student's using photographs again as a drawing tool.
And looking at colour palettes, and the most obvious thing, collect everything. So if there's a label on a can of tuna that you really like, or there is a pattern on a surface that you think is great, make a frottage, or in plain English, a rubbing of it. If there is the pattern of a shoelace, which you find quite elaborate.
Yeah, or if you buy a piece of clothing and it has a great label or any of those things, stick them in your visual diary.
Absolutely. And as you collect these things, there is, again, if we add that with the idea of being fluid, we see that this student has collected things and then taken it further and painted over them and drawn over them and cut into them or mucked around with them. And research and explore. They're the marking criteria. So here, images being woven, strange material realization. So the disco ball becoming a crash helmet. I don't see a lot of notation going on here, which worries me.
But that's not a workbook, they're just illustrating different
Yes.
ways of researching, really.
And don't leave it until the last moment. And I believe that's us.
Is that the end?
That's the end.
That's the end.
Look at
there's
that.
the marking happening.
Yeah, that's a workbook. That's a visual diary. For half a semester, yeah, that's okay. That'll do. But we see here that this might be the collection of thoughts, but we see that there's this over here as well. So they're held together with folio clips, so they could be explorations of drawings or printouts or photographic sheets. And looks like there's another book there as well. So it might be a whole semester's work.
It'll be a semester's work. But, you know, the reality is that you have, if you've been doing what you've been told to do, you've been taking a lot of photographic screenshots, saving images as TIFFs. So you've got a lot of stuff probably on the computer that's not printed. So you can now be laying that up in InDesign. Do they know anything about InDesign?
They know heaps about InDesign.
Okay, so you can be laying up those pages, those images in InDesign, and printing them out, and sticking them in your books. And if you are making, and I think that every one of you should make stuff,